Thank you. I am calling Kathleen Drew, Chair of the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council, calling to order our public meeting, public informational meeting for the Hop Hill Solar Project to order. Will Ms. Grantham call the roll?
Certainly. Department of Commerce.
Kate Kelly, present.
Department of Ecology.
Eli Levitt, present.
Department of Fish and Wildlife. Department of Natural Resources.
Lenny Young, present.
Utilities and Transportation Commission.
Stacy Brewster, present.
Assistant Attorney General Jenna Slocum. John Thompson. For the Hop Hill Project, Benton County, Paul Crouppen. I just wanted to let you know, those of you who are in here, to unmute your mic and speak into it, you just have to click the red button. So next I have Administrative Law Judge Dan Gerard.
Present.
For FSEC staff, Sonia Bumpus.
Sonia Bumpus, present.
Amy Hofgemeyer.
Present.
Amy Moon. Patty Betts. Sue Henderson. Joan Owens, present. Dave Walker. Sonia Scavland. Lisa Massengale.
Lisa Massengale, present.
Sarah Randolph. Sean Green.
Sean Green, present.
Lance Caputo. John Barnes.
Present.
Osa Davis. And Joanne Snarski.
Present.
And do we have a counsel for the environment present?
Megan Salome, present.
Thank you. Chair, there is a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Grantham. So as an introduction, the FSEC Council, when they receive an application for an energy facility site, is required by our statute to have an in-person meeting in the community within the first 60 days for information to provide an introduction by the applicant to the community, as well as to take public comments. And that is followed tonight by our land use hearing. And so we will be holding these two meetings back to back, which is what we prefer to do. So folks only have to come out once and not twice for this. We will go through the presentations as you see on the agenda, and then we will ask people who are here from the public to comment. Each will have 3 minutes to speak. And following that, depending on how long that takes, we will have a break and then move into the land use informational meeting, land use consistency hearing, excuse me. So that's the plan for this evening. And we have people signed up to testify both here in person as well as through Microsoft Teams. So it is a hybrid meeting this evening. Thank you again all for being here. And with that, I will ask Bright Knight to come forward for the project presentation.
Is this on now? Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. No? Is that? Okay.
I would also like to add that Mike Livingston from the Department of Fish and Wildlife is here with us this evening.
Good evening. Thanks, Chairman Drew and council members for inviting us here to talk about Hop Hill. My name is Paul Caudell. I'm on the board of directors for Bright Knight and sit on the company's customer advisory council. I've been working directly with the company and its customers since the first quarter of 2019, when I retired as CEO and president of one of Berkshire Hathaway's large regulated power and gas utility businesses here in the Western United States. For the purpose of tonight's focus, however, it's probably more important for me to note that I'm a native of Benton County. I was born here, and I'm sad to say a long time ago, at Cadlick Hospital and grew up in Richland in the Tri-Cities. My father worked at Hanford and my mom worked in the Kennewick school system and for the city of Richland. I still take a little pride in being a graduate of Columbia High School, class of '72, and was fortunate to begin my career in the power business with Bechtel here at WNP2 not long after graduating from college. I drove out to the Hop Hill site yesterday with an old friend, and we took the back roads through West Richland, Benton City, and Prosser. It didn't take long for me to reflect on the drive how markets, local community interests, and government permitting processes over time determine what the most productive use of land is. I grew up hiking, camping, and fishing on some of the same land we drove through yesterday, especially when we drove through the Yakima River area. If it was irrigated, our farmer neighbors at that point in time planted it in sugar beets and alfalfa, or grew cherry and apple trees. Further north, as you got up into Sunnyside and towards Yakima, it was hops. The less productive land was left to nature, which led to some of the epic dust storms that I can remember in our lore here in the Tri-Cities yet. Yesterday confirmed these changes. Much of this land is now covered with wine grapes and more hops. The land use decisions made here over the last 25 years or so have created a whole new industry helping diversify the regional economy in a way that my parents never imagined. I stood on the ridge at the site yesterday and see clearly that Hop Hill is a great site for a solar facility and for grazing. I give credit for the progress being made, not to just to my colleagues at Bright Night, but the vision and commitment of you local landowners, community leaders, and stakeholders who see the opportunity to use this project to take another step forward in the region's progress. But I know, as my dad used to say, that one man's treasure is another man's trash. While many of us see Hop Hill as progress, there are rightfully others who see it differently. And I recognize that. There's an important point here, and one that I've learned through experience developing, constructing, and operating large solar projects like Hop Hill. Permitting processes, like the one we're in with Hop Hill, don't have to create winners and losers. Land use decisions, especially with a project of this size, don't have to result in a binary win-lose outcome. There are issues with a project of this size. I've talked with a couple of the folks, neighbors, about traffic, for example. We recognize that. I know it is in Bright Night's best interest, and Ron and the team are committed to work in good faith with stakeholders involved to achieve outcomes beneficial to as many people as practical. Before I turn it over to Ron Casana, Bright Night's Chief Development Officer, I want to reinforce a key point. Projects like Hop Hill take years to put together. It is a complex, time-consuming, challenging, expensive, and some would say risky process. Take years to get to the point we're at today. And I know from personal experience the difference between what I would call a good project, one that can and will deliver for a wide range of stakeholders, and a bad project, one that delivers for the developer only. Hop Hill is a really good project, and I'm back home to help any way I can move it forward. Ron?
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chairman Drew, FSEC Council, staff, and the community for the opportunity to speak. Bright Night is a founder-owned and operated renewable independent power producer, or IPP. Being an IPP means we will be a part of the development, construction, and operation of the projects.
Yeah, we have to advance the slide.
Move the slides.
Yep. Next slide, please.
See,
Let's go one more. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so our involvement in all phases of the project means that we will be a long-term partner with the community. The journey already began as we have started the development of the Hop Hill project over 2 years ago now. In our experience, early community engagement is important because every community's needs and ideas are different. The feedback we have received from this community has helped us to shape the proposed project we are talking about here today. As a company, Bright Knight is focused on the development of utility scale renewable power projects here in the US and Asia Pacific. In the US, we are largely focused on solar, energy storage, and green hydrogen projects, and we now have 68 projects in development across the US. We have some of the most well-respected financial partners in the industry in Global Infrastructure Partners and Cordelio Power, which is owned by the Canadian Pension Fund. The Bright Knight team is 118 people and deeply talented and experienced. And in our past, we have collectively delivered more than 10 gigawatts of conventional and renewable power projects combined. 7 of our team members live right here in the Pacific Northwest. Bright Knight was founded on providing its customers and partners with differentiated solutions with a focus on safety, value, and reliability, and best-in-class execution. Our customers are power buyers and the community. 2 areas of Bright Knight differentiation I'd like to mention are technology and our customer-centric approach. We have a proprietary software platform we use to deliver innovative and optimized project solutions at the highest value to our customers. Our customer-focused approach helps to understand what the customer really wants and needs. Bright Knight's technology and our customer-focused differentiation has already given us results. We have a power sale agreement in place for 280 megawatts of clean power for the Hop Hill project. Power sales is a significant risk for any project, and we have taken a very big step to making this project a reality for the community in Washington State by selling this initial 280 megawatts. Excuse me. We are now talking with other industry participants about the sale of the remaining 220 megawatts, and the interest is strong. Next slide, please. Our focus on delivering successful projects to our customers and the communities where we desire to be a trusted partner is our highest priority here at Bright Knight. We have the tools, the system, the financial support, and the people to ensure that this happens. We already have in place, as you can see here, a highly experienced team dedicated to the delivery of the Hop Hill project. This provides the focus needed to deliver large, complex infrastructure projects such as this. In closing, we are excited to partner with this community to further its legacy beyond nuclear and hydro generation and to support Washington State's leadership in the energy industry. My colleague, Chris Wissel-Tyson, VP of Development for Bright Knight, will now give you an overview of the project. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Drew, FSEC Council, and staff. You guys can hear. The purposes of this hearing is to talk about why we cited the project here and how it was developed. So I'm going to walk you through the development of the site. Hop Hill is a 500 megawatt solar and 500 megawatt battery storage project, which we've been developing in this community for the last 2 years. Hop Hill is located on 5,000 acres just south of Rattlesnake Hills. It'll be interconnected to the electrical grid through 3 different interconnection options on the BPA system. We often get the question, why'd you decide to site here? It just happened a few minutes ago. Well, we sited and developed Hop Hill for 4 main goals. Our first goal is to provide low-cost, reliable energy. This area has a strong solar resource, which we can utilize with a battery to shift that energy to when customers need it. Further, there are excellent existing generation resources, like hydro and nuclear, we can pair with to provide dependable and affordable energy to the region. 2, we want to avoid lengthy infrastructure projects. As many of you know, there's significant constraints in the transmission system or moving electrical energy here in the Pacific Northwest. A potential project can trigger line upgrades throughout both Washington and Oregon, cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and take 10 to 15 years to build. By utilizing existing infrastructure, we can reduce these impacts to our communities and produce cheaper power. Goal 3. We want to minimize impacts to natural resources, the community, while maximizing community benefits. First, we specifically targeted non-irrigated grazing land that had both low commercial value, but also avoided valuable natural habitat. We also sited the project in a location that is shielded from the surrounding community, so Benton County residents can enjoy the benefits of this project, including $253 million in tax revenue over the project life, without experiencing the significant impact to their view shed. Last, our 4th goal was to develop a project that honors and preserves the productive nature of the land. We were challenged with this goal early on, and we're excited to bring agrivoltaics to the Hop Hill site, which is the combination of renewable generation and traditional agricultural uses on the same land. This shows that agriculture and renewable energy can work in concert and not conflict with each other. Next slide, please. Once we decide on a general siting location for a project, we refine our final location by addressing a number of constraints or considerations. First, we work to avoid natural resources, both species and habitat. With Hop Hill, we worked early on with Department of Fish and Wildlife to avoid impacts to the ferruginous hawk prey habitat by shifting the site from the northwest corner to the southeast portion of the site. Next, we performed transect cultural resource surveys and avoided, as well as buffered, any resources we found in the area. Last, we worked to avoid valuable habitat both on state and federal lands. By starting with this larger siting area, we're able to avoid these impacts as well as microsite the project throughout this process. In my next slides, we'll look at some of the visual renderings of what this project will look like. This first slide shows the view from Snipes Road directly south of the site. This shows the same view, but after the project is installed. You can see the part of the array on the far right-hand side, but it's largely shielded by the hill south of the ranch. Next slide. This is a visual from Messimer Road on the northern portion of the ranch, so actually in kind of the center of where the project will be. Next slide. In this slide, you can see the majority of the project. We wanted to show a close-up rendering on the project site to give you an idea of what the panels will look like, as well as the transmission line. The panels will stand around 8 feet tall, but they'll be much shorter than the 18 to 20-foot hop trellises to the south. Now I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay Hesh, our permitting director, to talk about site diligence and mitigation.
Next slide, please. Thanks, Chris. Good evening. I'm Lindsay Hesh. I'm going to address the 3rd purpose of this presentation, which includes environmental, social, and economic impacts. In doing so, I will share an overview with you of the project diligence, potential impacts, and mitigation measures proposed. You can see on this slide a list of the many studies and plans to create the best project possible for host communities. The project layout is preliminary, and we will continue to refine design as a part of this process. Your input is important to helping us design the best project possible. Based on the results of these studies, we have been able to verify the constructability of the site, avoid impacts to wetlands and their buffers, minimize proposed water body impacts to ephemeral drainages, avoid impacts to all cultural resource sites identified during survey, and as Chris mentioned a bit earlier, shift the project layout east to reduce potential impacts to species and their habitats. The majority of the project within the solar array perimeter fence is planned to occur on pasture, grassland, and developed environments, but a smaller portion is planned on shrub steppe habitat. Although the project worked to site around species and their habitats, we have developed a draft habitat mitigation plan to compensate for any loss to shrub steppe. Bright Night strives to hire locally whenever possible. Our project is estimated to create approximately 300 plus construction jobs and 3 to 5 permanent jobs. Our goal is to hire a majority of the on-site construction workforce locally to the extent workers are available, with an estimated 75% of the workforce expected to already reside within a 1-hour commute of the project area. Our socioeconomic review indicates that the area has a large construction workforce to pull from and that there is sufficient housing for any temporary workers needed. Moving forward, we have multiple plans listed on the slide you see here that will be finalized to protect the community and the environment, such as those for emergency response, traffic control, cultural resources, decommissioning, stormwater, and vegetation management. Next slide, please. The proposed project is low impact and minimally invasive that allows for the continued use of agriculture during operation. Before I go into each of these boxes you see on the slide here, I'd like to note a few things about Hop Hill that will make us a good neighbor in general. Our project is safe and quiet. It will provide real benefits to the surrounding community, including the ability to continue agricultural uses within and surrounding the project. The project creates a large overall tax benefit and cash flow into the community and uses minimal community support services, facilities, and utilities to host it. The solar panels are not harmful. Millions of Americans have installed them on their homes, businesses, schools, and farmland. The project will not produce harmful chemicals, will not emit odor, and would not be audible outside of the perimeter fence during operations. At the end of the project's useful life, the site would be decommissioned and can return to its pre-existing use. Now, starting with the boxes you see on the slide, moving top left to right, some key examples that demonstrate our further commitment to create a project in harmony with the existing land and the community include: first, we began to review the project in a very large 11,000 acre siting area to identify the best approximate 5,000 acre place for the proposed fenced area. This has allowed us to site the project around environmental constraints more than we would typically be able to do so. We have minimized impacts to water bodies and avoided them entirely for wetlands. We have applied a conservative 100-foot buffer for ephemeral drainages and only proposed impacts of water bodies at crossing locations for access and collector lines. We have reviewed fencing perimeters to allow for wildlife movement. We will avoid impacts to cultural resource sites identified to date and are committed to working with the Washington Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation and Native American tribes to avoid impacts to the greatest extent possible. We are also committing to on-site cultural resources monitoring for all phases of construction. We have designed the project to work around areas with steep topography and will minimize grading to the greatest extent feasible. Moving on to the next row. Oh, sorry, that's me. Apologies. The project area is largely set back from major roads and populated areas, preserving the viewshed for neighbors. We are utilizing existing transmission infrastructure, and the project has been predominantly sited on existing non-irrigated grazed pasture. We know that agricultural preservation is important to the Benton County community, and we are excited to propose dual use of the site to keep the land productive while the facility is in operations. We are evaluating fencing options that would best balance the needs for predation protection, wildlife movement, and security. And lastly, we are planning to purchase water from a permitted off-site source. Thank you. As this concludes my high-level overview of project impacts and proposed mitigation, and I will hand it back over to Chris.
Thank you, Lindsay. Next slide. So we'd like the industry and the public to see solar panels as farm equipment and the sun as a solar resource, but we know we have a lot of work to do. Agrivoltaics, in this case, combining grazing and solar generation, shows the benefits we can bring to traditional agricultural communities. By adding panels to the project site, we can shade the property, increasing water conservation by up to 300%, and double plant growth as their growth is water limited here in Eastern Washington. This adds up to an increase in carrying capacity of 10% for sheep grazing when adding solar panels to a property. With agrivoltaics, we're also able to restore and preserve a historic grazing operation that spans all the way back to the original homesteading of the land. The same family plans to own and operate this grazing operation through our operations. Last, we just don't want to help set a new standard for the industry, but we want to contribute to its improvement. For the Hop Hill site, we're sponsoring through local universities an agrivoltaic research project on the transportation of nutrients under the panels. So thank you guys for your time. We would love the opportunity to show you we can be a good neighbor and also be able to produce clean, reliable energy to your community. Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. I'm going to ask the council members if they have questions, and I'll start off with one. As I looked at the application, I noticed especially, I focused in a little bit on the shrub step habitat, and I noticed that there are some 1,000+ acres that's classified as altered shrub step. And so I didn't understand whether that was then going to have panels on it, if it was outside a fenced area, was the wildlife going to have access to that? If you could answer some of that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, so my understanding of the classifications are permanent, altered, and temporary. And so temporary is just that, it'd be outside the perimeter fence once that was operational and moves on. Permanent would be considered like a direct impact. So where the operations and maintenance building would be, or where the parking area, substation, an actual gravel pad or an impact from a piling. And then the altered habitat is really considered everything else within the perimeter fence that is still allowed or still offers ecological benefit, but doesn't have the direct habitat. Or doesn't have the direct impact to the habitat. So it would be basically the area within the panels that's still naturally vegetated within and around the panels, if that makes sense.
So I guess my question is then two-part, that for the time that there's solar panels, wildlife, except for perhaps small critters, wouldn't have access to that habitat. And secondly, would those areas also be the ones that would be grazed by sheep, or would it be other areas? So I'm wondering about what the impact to that shrub step habitat would be over time in reality.
Yeah, no, I understand your concern. The site is currently being grazed. So yes, we are planning on using the entire site for grazing. So, and I'm so sorry, but can you repeat the first question?
So it's not, there's not access to wildlife,
right,
for the wildlife habitat in those intervening years where it's being used for the solar facility then.
Right, yeah, so we are evaluating fencing options that would balance the needs for the sheep grazing, for any security measures we need with the facility, as well as being wildlife friendly. And we are very willing to work with WDFW and figuring out what the best kind of options are to make sure that it's still in use ecologically as much as feasible.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions from council members?
So the fence question was what I was going to follow up with is, do you guys are proposing a fairly innovative project here with the agriculture integration. Are you, so on the fence piece, we struggle with the notion that these are chain link fences that are 8 feet tall. So they're pretty much barriers to wildlife movement. So do you have some ideas on other designs and options that we can you'll be entertaining so that we can review those?
Yeah, I'd say first of all, as a company, we are very interested in pro wildlife friendly fencing. As long as it can pass safety standards, we can get through financing, and local fire marshal's okay with it. There is this added complexity with this project, which we're starting to realize is if we add this grazing component, there is a predation aspect, and so the owners and the people that'll be running this grazing operation are worried about predation. And so things like leaving a gap under the fence, those sort of options that we really like as a company, that becomes a worry when you have coyotes that can come in and get into the sheep. So, you know, that's something it's a little bit of give and take. We're going back and forth and seeing if there's like a happy medium, if there's any way we can provide access to certain pastures during a part of the year, because there's different tranches of the site. So the sheep could be grazing in one area and we open up a wildlife corridor during that time and we shift it back and forth. You know, we're trying to think of different options, but this is a little bit of uncharted territory in terms of trying to do both these things together. And so we're just we're you know, willing to work with you guys in WFW to kind of figure out what the best solution would be. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you. I know, do you have a question at this point in time?
I was just going to,
one more.
I'll be brief.
Right.
Should I? Yeah, I was just going to say, there's also, we definitely want to listen and, you know, hear from all stakeholders, like he was saying about balancing it. There are some resources out there, one in particular by Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I think WDFW might have referenced it in some of their guidelines. But there are some resources out there to pull from regionally. And, you know, it's just a matter of like working with the agency and finding out what's most appropriate here.
Thank you, Chairman. Say thank you for coming to Tri-Cities. This is really noteworthy given the weather and conditions you're experiencing. And it was the weather that drove me to ask the following question. How much power can you generate on a day like today? And two, how many days of sunshine in Tri-Cities at the site will you experience? How many days do you expect?
Yeah, so yeah, we will see production from the facility during the winter months. There actually will be production from the facility during overcast days as well. It will be reduced, and it really will depend on, you know, if it's intermittent and just how thick that cloud cover really is. Chris can speak to the actual capacity factor and what we're expecting to see for production from the facility on an annualized basis. And Chris, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. I mean, I think we're looking in the mid 20% for capacity factor. You know, very logically in the summer, middle of the day, you have very large spikes in production. And that's one of the ideas of having a battery and to shift that power in the summertime. In the wintertime, if you look at that kind of peak you can get during the summer, your probably average day is your production is probably 30% of that, you know, in the middle of winter. So it is a hit to production, but you know, we are a business. We put a MET station out there for a year and measured the solar radiance. We have a very good idea of it, and we're here because it's a very strong resource for the region.
How much of that information is in the ASC? And forgive me, I was only appointed last Friday, so I haven't read the ASC yet. I saw it over there in the corner. But if you kind of just share with me.
If the production numbers aren't in there, I believe we'd be able to share those.
All right.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're not exactly. Yeah, we could double check if they're in there.
And if you could send that to our siting specialist so that it will be shared with all the council, because that's one of the things we need to do is make sure the information doesn't go to one, but to all of us who are participating.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council members who are on Teams, are there any questions?
This is Stacey.
Go ahead, Ms. Brewster.
Thanks.
We're not hearing you very well.
Oh, here. I will hold my question for later then. Thanks.
We can hear you now.
Okay. Speaking about shrub step earlier, I noticed in the preliminary site plan that there's some overlay, actually quite a bit in the northeast corner of the solar area. Can you talk about that and how the effects of grazing on that shrub step will be looked at?
I think I covered in the presentation here. The reason we've shifted over into that corner, I mean, again, this is kind of a balancing of resources and impacts, was, early on, we worked with Mike at WDFW, and there was a strong concern and want to preserve prey habitat, shrub step or not, that was present on the northwestern portion of the site. So we had, in terms of actual shrub step habitat, a lot less impact over there, but we were closer to a nesting frugivorous hawks that were using that area to catch prey. And so the decision was made, that was maybe the priority according to WFW. And so it was better to shift over and go into that shrub step habitat as opposed to impacting that prey area. The land is currently grazed. We can follow up with maybe some more specifics around the impact of sheep grazing versus the cows and beef they have out there already. But I want to be clear that everywhere we're siting on this property is still being grazed by the landowner.
Thank you. Any other questions from council members? Next on our agenda, thank you very much for your presentation and for answering our questions, is the exciting process presentation. Ms. Hofgemeyer.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, this is Amy Hofgemeyer. I am the, thank you, Director of Siting Compliance for FSEC, and I will be giving a short presentation on the FSEC siting process for those of you who are new to our agency. Next slide. A little bit of history of the FSEC agency. The Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council was created in 1970 for the siting of thermal power plants. The intent was to create a one-stop permitting agency for large energy facilities. FSEC is comprised of state and local government members who review each application before voting to make a council recommendation to the governor. This recommendation comes along with a draft site certification agreement, or SCA, which defines all pre-construction, construction, operation, and decommissioning plans. If approved by the governor, the decision preempts other state or local regulations. Next slide. FSEC is comprised of members from several different state-level agencies. The chairperson is appointed by the governor, and there are standing members from 5 other agencies appointed by those agencies to sit on the council full-time. The current council is made up of Chairwoman Kathleen Drew, Eli Levitt from the Department of Ecology, Mike Livingston from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, Kate Kelly from the Department of Commerce, Lenny Young from the Department of Natural Resources, and Stacy Brewster from the Utilities and Transportation Commission. There are additional agencies that may elect to appoint a council member during the review of an application. These agencies are the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Health, and the Military Department. To this point, none of these agencies have elected to appoint a member for the review of this application. The local county shall also appoint a council member for the review of an application. Benton County has appointed Paul Crouppen for the review of the Hop Hill project. Next slide, please. So to reiterate, there are types of projects that can be certified through FSEC, and some projects such as thermal power plants over 350 megawatts and nuclear facilities for the purpose of generating electricity are required to site through FSEC. Others, such as wind, solar, and renewable hydrogen, geothermal, wave tidal, etc., may opt in at any size. Transmission lines greater than 115 kilovolts can also opt in, and there are additional thresholds for pipelines, refineries, and other storage facilities that can also elect to site through FSEC, and those thresholds are found in the revised Code of Washington 80.50.020. Next slide. Here is a map of the facilities that are certified or have applied for certification under FSEC's jurisdiction. You can see marked in green, there are 6 operating facilities, including 2 natural gas facilities, 1 nuclear facility, 1 solar facility, and 2 wind facilities. The blue marks indicate the 3 additional facilities that have been approved but have yet to start construction, 2 being wind facilities and 1 being a solar facility. The clear or transparent marker is the 1 facility that is in the process of decommissioning. And FSEC is currently reviewing applications for 6 projects, including the Hop Hill project, which is what brings us here this evening. Next slide, please. Here is a flow chart showing the general process an applicant will go through when they submit an application to FSEC. You can see that there are multiple processes that happen concurrently while FSEC is reviewing an application. On the left, you will see there's a land use hearing and adjudicative process. In the middle, the State Environmental Policy Act, or SEPA process. And on the right, the third process involving identifying and preparing additional applicable environmental permits. All these processes ultimately feed into the council's recommendation made to the governor. Next slide. Where an adjudicative proceeding is required, a record is compiled and parties to the adjudication are identified. In the process of preparing for the adjudication, parties are identified and the issues to be adjudicated are determined. Exhibits and testimony are provided, after which the council looks at all the information in the adjudication record and deliberates. Finally, the council draws up their findings of fact and conclusions of law from the information provided throughout these proceedings and incorporate those findings into their recommendation to the governor, along with the SEPA review and associated permit requirements and conditions. Next slide, please. For every proposed project, a SEPA review is performed. When a determination of significance and a decision to prepare an environmental impact statement, or EIS, is made, public comments are taken on the scope of the EIS. After public comment for scoping, the SEPA responsible official determines the scope of the EIS. A draft EIS is prepared and issued with a minimum 30-day public comment period, after which the final EIS is prepared and released. In some instances, a determination of non-significance, a DNS, or a mitigated determination of non-significance, MDNS, is issued. If the SEPA responsible official determines that a project meets the criteria of a DNS or MDNS, an EIS is not required. In this process, the determination is noticed to the public and there is a minimum 15-day public comment for an MDNS, while an DNS requires no public comment period. Next slide, please. FSEC is the issuing agency for any applicable environmental permits that a facility may require, which may include water quality and air quality permits. These permits are identified in the final order with the council's recommendation to the governor. Next slide, please. At the conclusion of the council's review of an application, a recommendation is made to the governor to either approve or reject the application. This initiates a 60-day window within which the governor will then approve the application, reject the application, or remand the application back to the council for further consideration. Any application that is rejected by the governor is a final decision for that application. Please. If an application is approved by the governor, FSEC then has oversight of the environmental compliance for the life of the facility through decommissioning. FSEC has standing contracts with appropriate state agencies that assist in the monitoring and enforcement of conditions either in the site certification agreement, identified permits, or stipulations in the EIS or MDNS. FSEC's enforcement authority extends to the issuance of any penalties that may apply. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation for this evening. Before I end, I'd like to remind everybody how they may submit comments for this proposal. If you'd like to sign up to speak this evening and you are joining us virtually or by phone, you can call the FSEC main line at 360-664-1345 to be added to the speaker list. You may also send in written comments by postal mail to our office at 621 Woodland Square Loop, P.O. Box 43172, Olympia, Washington, 98504-3172. Comments may also be submitted to our online comment database at https://comments.fsec.wa.gov. There are two databases available for the duration of the meeting, one for general comments and one for comments specific to land use, both of which will be open until midnight this evening. Are there any questions?
Thank you. I would like to now invite the Council for the Environment, Megan Salome, to make a few, say a few words to the audience here tonight. The Attorney General, also through our statute, has a Council for the Environment that is there for any public members to talk to about the project and bring concerns forward. Ms. Salome?
Hi, can you turn my camera on? Or is that not possible?
Owen is working on it.
Huh.
I think he's got it.
Okay. Hi. Nice to see you all. My name is Megan Salome. As Chair Drew mentioned, I was appointed by the Attorney General to represent the public and its interest in protecting the quality of the environment before FSEC when FSEC makes a decision on this project. So my role is that of a party to the proceeding, similar to the applicant. I don't work for FSEC, nor do I make a final decision on whether the project should be approved or denied. I just simply advocate to FSEC regarding the public's environmental concerns for or against the project. So in that regard, I'm very happy to hear from you. I'll be listening tonight. And if you want to reach out to me after the meeting to talk more, I would be happy to do that. I'll put my email and phone number in the chat, but for those of you who are here in person, my phone number is 206-389-2437. And my email is Megan, MEGAN, .Salome, SALLOMI, @atg.wa.gov. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, we will move to our public comments, and Judge Gerard is going to be presiding over the public comments. We will have Ms. Grantham call the names, and we will have a clock that will have 3 minutes. Judge Gerard.
Everyone, I just want to give some clarification on what the comments are going to be and articulate. We'll have 2 sections tonight where comments can be made. This initial section is for general comments on the project. Secondarily, when we go to the land use hearing, those will be limited exclusively to the land use hearing comments. So if you have a lot to say, reserve the land use comments to that particular portion of the hearing, as you will be limited only to 3 minutes of comments at this point. We are recording these, and there are people online, so if you're either present in person or online, please be sure to articulate and speak up loudly so everyone can hear you. So with that, we'll go ahead and call our first participant, please.
If we can pause just a second here. Do we have a court reporter tonight as well?
Chair Drew, this is Andrea Grantham. Currently, I'm not seeing a court reporter online, but I contacted our court reporter service. I let them know that we are recording, so I will be sending this over. But for that, please, whenever I call your name and you come up to speak, can you please spell out your name fully for the record?
And we will start the time for your comments after you spell your name. So that's, if you have a long name or a short name, it won't make a difference.
Chairman Drew, Judge Gerard, Counsel, we have a very short video with some public comments. Would now be the time to present that?
Why don't we give the folks here a chance to comment, and we can conclude the meeting with that.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
This is Andrea Grantham again. I will call the first person. I have Jason Lohr. Is there a Jason Lohr on the line?
And for those of you participating remotely, if you are on mute, that may be why we can't hear you. So go ahead and turn that off if that is the case.
I will go ahead and call the next person, and if Jason Lore comes back, we can go back over to them. The next person I have is Stan Isley.
Yes, this is Stan Isley.
Can hear
My name is spelled, my last name is Isley. Thank you, Chair Drew and FSEC members and staff for giving me this opportunity to comment tonight on the proposed Hop Hill Solar Project. Thanks also to the Bright Night representatives for presenting their information and giving us information about the proposed project. I'm the Conservation Chair for the Yakima Valley Audubon Society, and I'm offering these comments this evening on behalf of Yakima Valley Audubon. Yakima Valley Audubon and the conservation community in general support the rapid transition away from fossil fuel energy sources in Washington to sustainable renewable energy sources like solar. We want, however, to do it right, to make this transition while avoiding negative environmental impacts and other collateral damage. We encourage the development of dispersed solar energy generation like rooftop solar, but we accept the need to develop utility scale solar energy projects like this Hop Hill Solar Project to meet Washington State's rapid transition goals to clean energy. Washington State University Energy Program is currently leading an effort to develop maps of potential least conflict solar energy development sites across the Columbia Plateau of central and eastern Washington. A large group of volunteer stakeholders, myself included, we're participating in this project, identifying areas that must be protected, while at the same time identifying areas that represent potential solar farm sites with minimal likely conflicts or concerns. WSU's final report and maps will be finished and available to everyone by June 30th of this year, June 30th, 2023. Yakima Valley Audubon encourages FSEC and permitting authorities and also the solar energy developers to use the least conflict maps to inform and guide future solar development in Washington's Columbia Plateau when they become available. In regards to this particular Hop Hill Solar Project, specifically, Audubon is concerned about potential negative impacts to ferruginous hawk, negative impacts to sagebrush sparrow habitats, also negative impacts to shrub steppe habitat, and impacts to the Arid Lands Initiative Hanford Core area. We recommend, Yakima Valley Audubon, we recommend that the Hop Hill solar developers work very closely with the experts at WDFW, also with Washington Audubon staff and others to avoid negative impacts on as the Hop Hill project is developed and to ensure that unavoidable impacts are fully mitigated. I was a little concerned hearing about the impacts this project proposes to already grazed shrub steppe. We've lost 80% of the shrub steppe habitat that existed 200 years ago in this state, and the shrub steppe obligate are declining.
Mr. Isley, we have you at the 3-minute point. Thank you for your comments, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
More in writing.
You can send more in writing if you choose.
Next person I have is Rylan Grimes. Do we have a Rylan Grimes on the line? Okay, I will call the next person. I have Mike Aldrett.
Council, my name is Mike Aldrett, Mikealldritt. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the Hop Hill Solar Project. Not only does the project help Washington State get to its goals, to get to the clean energy transition goals that have been set for the state, it also, with developers like Bright Night, who have reached out to the local building trades, that's a great opportunity for local people, apprenticeship programs. These jobs provide living wage jobs, full family benefits, and a retirement with dignity. So I'm here to speak on behalf of Ironworkers Local 14, as well as Local 29, Portland, Oregon. That's my comment. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Albert.
The next person I have is Chad Higgins.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Chad Higgins. You can spell my name as ChadHiggins. I come before you today to be an informational resource. As a researcher and professor at Oregon State University, I have researched these systems for the past 8 years, and much of the cited information in regards to the benefits of these systems, agrivoltaic systems presented here tonight, was taken from research that I performed here in the region. Briefly, these systems, and I have dedicated my research efforts in life to finding ways to integrate energy systems into agricultural systems for mutual benefit, and how those systems can increase the sustainability of our water, food, and energy resources, as well as the sustainability of our local farmers. I come at this from a land preservation and agricultural land preservation perspective, and recognizing also the need for renewable energy resources. In our research, we have shown that the water efficiency of plants within an agrivoltaic system in arid regions can increase by up to 300%, that we have doubled the production of forage pasture under these systems when properly managed, and that the sheep stress hormones are reduced, as well as we were able to graze more sheep per acre, more head of sheep per acre. I believe, and the research has demonstrated, that these systems are viable and really a step forward and a potential win-win-win situation for rural communities and our push towards a more sustainable future. Thank you, Chair Down and council members.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
The next person I have is Jim Milbauer.
Chair Drew and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to comment tonight. My name is Jim, J-I-M, Milbauer, M-I-L-L-B-A-U-E-R, and I'm a resident of Benton County, and I reside in Kennewick. I am speaking in support of the Hop Hill Solar Project. I believe this project will help enable our clean energy transition and create local economic opportunities. It will do so by incorporating historic agricultural use. I personally have installed solar panels in my residence because I believe in having a diversified energy portfolio to rely upon, and I apply the same belief to this project for our county, region, and state. This project will support our local labor workforce and therefore our economy, and given our state's renewable energy needs, the profound economic opportunity this project represents for the local community, and land use consistency with the county comp plan, I urge you to move forward with this project. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Milbauer.
The next person I have is James Remy.
James Remy, Jamesremmey. I am a member of the IBEW 112 here based out of Kennewick. I'm speaking in favor of the Hop Hill Solar Farm. We install solar panels all the time. This will enable hundreds of jobs for my local brothers and sisters in the IBEW 112, as well as other trades. We simply need to go in a more economical direction when it comes to providing energy, and the more energy sources that we have, the more cost effective it will be for everyone to have energy in their homes. And also the environmental impact, as far as I'm aware, is much less than hydro, wind, and nuclear. So I think it's a win-win to diversify in all these areas, but solar has a really great or low impact on the environment. Thank you very much.
Next, I have Catherine Tomini.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Catherine Tomini, Kathryn, Tomini, Tominey. I'm a retired research scientist from the National Lab. I've lived here since February of 1968, but I grew up on a very traditional family dairy farm. So I've got technology history and farming history. I've been following agrivoltaics for some years now, primarily via NREL and what have you. And I've been very impressed with the approach of planning this project. It leaves the land pretty much sort of as is, not a lot of irrigation, nothing overhead. The livestock, the sheep, will have not only good grazing, but some shade on the really hot days, which makes a big difference. And I think the overall approach as laid out is working very hard to make a good balance between the ongoing grazing business, the sheep business, and the natural world. And last, the farming business, both grazing and crop, have a lot of challenges because of markets. And the reliable stream of electricity revenue will be very helpful. It has been helpful in many other areas in stabilizing income and leaving the land in agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tomini.
Next, I have Carl Anderson.
Carl Anderson, Carlanderson. I am the fourth generation rancher on the proposed site. We do plan on reintroducing sheep, just as my great grandparents did. That will help diversify the farm and, along with the solar income, make it a sustainable situation. The land is non-irrigated, very low production. The cattle are spread out about one pair, cow-calf pair per 25 acres. Very dry. In my opinion, these solar panels are not much different than the apple orchards to the south or the hop trellises, wine vineyards. It's just another product that the land can produce some income. It is a very isolated area. On a busy day, there might be 2 or 3 cars that drive by. The way the geography is, you cannot see it from town. Unlike the Horse 7 Hills project, there shouldn't be any long-term effects with the neighbors or community. I speak in favor of the project, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Next, I have Steve Branch.
Good evening. My name is Steve Branch. That's Steve and Branch. I'm a Zirkle Fruit Company, and we are a tree fruit and grape grower, and part of the Hop Hills project will cross over a portion of our vineyard. We support this project, and we also support the team that's been working on it. Hop Hill is going to provide significant solar power and storage towards the renewable energy demands of our communities. This project also directly aligns with the regional and state goals related to renewable energy. We've been consistently impressed with the project team and their approach in caring for the affected lands and ensuring that they do not disturb our operations and those also in the surrounding area. They've shown themselves to be honest and transparent partners at all points. Can add as a little bit of an aside that as a family owned and operated farming operation, we can tend to be a little bit skeptical when people approach us to partner on projects. and we tend to be a little hesitant on comments of platitudes and trust us and those types of comments. However, we had the joy of actually hosting the founder of Bright Night at our facility and quickly realized that we both have a great care of environmental concerns. He himself is a regenerative farmer, which is something that we care very deeply about. And at every point during our conversations with Bright Night, they show themselves to be very caring, honest, and transparent with us, addressing our needs and concerns at all those points. So for all those reasons, we would encourage your support of this project. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Branch.
Next, I have Ira Johnson.
My name is Ira Johnson, I-R-A, Johnson, Johnsson, and I live in Kennewick. I have visited with everybody here. They've done an excellent job of presentation, much better than the wind project that people want to put in. And my question is, who's going to pay for this? Is us taxpayers paying for it? Or is somebody else paying for it? Another question is, who gets the benefit of the electricity? Do we get it or does Seattle get it? If Seattle gets it, move it over there and let Seattle do it then. We talked about chain link fence and sheep and all that. Well, on that area up there, deer and elk travel through there. So that's something you need to think about. Environmental wise, you're going to have a lot of concrete, and that includes having water to mix the concrete with. Where are you going to get this? How's that going to increase the road traffic? All these things like that we need to consider. It's good we're going to get to use local labor. That's good for our guys here. Lots of good points, but I just want to know who's paying for it. Is it us taxpayers of Washington or who? That's my question. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Next I have is Mike Bosey.
Thank you, Council. That's Mike, M-I-K-E, Bosse, B-O-S-S-E. Thank you for your time. Thank you for this opportunity to give public comment. I am a representative of Operating Engineers Local 302, representing 14,000 operating engineers through Alaska, Washington, and Idaho, with about 1,200 here locally. Projects such as the Hop Hill project provides good, sustainable family jobs here locally. On previous projects, we've heard the comments and the arguments that, hey, these are just construction jobs. We build our careers one construction job after another. We build things, we move on, we build the next thing. So projects such as this project is very important to our livelihoods and we support it. On a personal note, I think it's a good point to remember that this proposed land is already used as grazing land, so the impact of sheep to the shrub step wouldn't pose, in my opinion, any more impact than it's already posed upon it. This is also a private project proposed on private property that poses no real harm or risk to the public, so therefore preserving the rights of the landowners to do what they need or can do on their own private property should be preserved. Appreciate your time and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bose.
Next, I have Aubrey Newton.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Aubrey Newton, AubreyNewton. Thank you, Chair Drew and FSEC Council for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. As mentioned, I'm Aubrey Newton. I'm the director of the Northwest Laborers and Employers Cooperation and Education Team. Here this evening commenting as an affiliate of Labor's Local 348, located in the Tri-City area. Bright Night's proposal for the Hop Hill Solar Project is exactly the kind of project Washington's local workforce, and specifically the state's legacy fossil fuel workers, need in order to expand their skills, so they can fully participate in new job opportunities created by the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. The laborers are encouraged by and celebrate the efforts that the developer is taking and has taken to utilize local workers in Washington for projects such as this one. In addition to hiring local workers, we encourage the utility, the developer, and the FSEC Council to leverage existing labor resources in the community, such as construction, trade unions, as they are doing to meet the demand for the pipeline of energy projects expected to come online in the next few years. By partnering with construction unions like ours and others that you will hear tonight, and taking advantage of our free apprenticeship and training programs, we can grow and train our own skilled local solar workforce while ensuring safe and quality construction at no additional cost to ratepayers. Construction unions like ours and others have a base of workers with years of experience in the infrastructure to recruit and train local workers and the ability to work with our local contractor partners to ramp up quickly and safely. We bring this up because of the ability to quickly bring in a diverse workforce from disadvantaged communities and inherently enhance opportunities for women, veterans, and people of color to transition into energy projects like this one. Therefore, we urge you to approve this project and set precedents for good developers like Bright Knight that want to grow the economy, participate in Washington's energy transition, and create jobs for workers to grow in the Tri-City area. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newton.
I will call on Jason Lohr again. And lastly, I will call on Rylan Grimes one more time. Okay, Judge, that is the end of my sign-up sheet. I understand that Bright Knight brought in a sign-up sheet, so some people in the crowd might have signed up with that. I'm not sure how you want to go about it.
I guess I'm not going to get asked.
Pardon? Who just spoke?
I guess I failed somehow not to sign up or something.
Would you go ahead and state your name for us, please?
Oh, well.
I need you to state and spell your name, and you can go ahead and make your comments.
Hello?
Yes, sir, I am speaking with you. If you wish to make comments now, I need you to state and spell your name.
Oh, I'll make a comment. My name is Greg Wagner. I'm with the group known as C, Citizens Educated About Solar Energy.
Wait, so,
I oppose solar.
Wait, slow down. I need you to spell your name also, please, for the record, sir.
My what?
You need to spell your name, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wagner.
Go ahead, Mr. Wagner. You can make your comments now at this point. Please go ahead and reset the clock.
Okay. Greg Wagner with the group known as C, Citizens Educated About Solar Energy. I oppose the solar project. It does harm to the environment, to the citizens. It will create a few temporary full-time jobs for union members. I support that. But if you really want to create jobs for union people, it should be full-time factory jobs that give them good benefits. They don't have to travel all across the country to work at a solar project. When that solar project is done, there'll be very few, if any, full-time positions for citizens in the area. The solar project will cover, 12,000 acres of ground, deliver very little electricity to the grid. It does more harm than it does good. Solar is not the future for America. If anything, it's going to destroy America. We need to have power plants powered by natural gas, coal, nuclear that will give us the reliable, affordable electricity we need to make our country prosper. Solar energy is something that will just destroy our country, all for the sake of Governor Inslee's ridiculous green energy projects, all earmarked on the east side of the Cascade Mountains, none near his home. This is all a hypocrisy, and it needs to change. Our future depends on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Okay, at this point, we're going to orderly offer up additional comments if someone would like to do that. We're going to start with individuals who are currently physically present. If you did not sign up and you wish to make comments, go ahead and step up to the podium. We'll give you a few minutes to do that. If no one does, we'll move on to those who are participating virtually. So we do have one participant. So let's go ahead and let her go first, and you can go second. And then again, please state and spell your name for the record, and then you can go ahead and begin.
My name is Karen Brun, Karenbrun, and I actually just have a question for Bright Night, if that's allowed. I believe you mentioned that you have a power contract for 280 megawatts. Is that, I won't ask you specifically who that's to or with, but is it a Washington utility?
It's a company that.
So does that imply that the
Sir, if
power
you
is
are going
going
to speak, would you go ahead and step to the podium and so the participants virtually can also hear you?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, the buyer has operations within the state of Washington.
So does that mean that the power will stay in Washington?
The power is very likely to be consumed locally and regionally. If you look at solar irradiance, it's much stronger to the south. I mean, I think it would make more sense if, I think you're implying or asking if the power may be sent elsewhere. I think it would be beneficial to build the project elsewhere. So I think having it here in this region, I think there's probably a high likelihood of that power staying here within this region.
Okay, because my concern is that if that power goes someplace else, it's not going to do anything to work into Governor Inslee's, goal.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brun. And we do have additional comments. Before we do, the project will still be, participants will be around during the break and before we get into the land use consistency. If you do have any questions for them, go ahead and reserve them at that point. Right now, this is just a public comment opportunity. So.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Drew and the FSEC Council for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Deacon Letnich, DEKENLETINICH. I had signed up to speak during the land use, but I feel like my comments are probably more appropriate for this time, so I moved myself up. I'm the Assistant Political and Legislative Director for the Washington and Northern Idaho District Council of Laborers. We have roughly 8,000 members across the state and locally, Local 348 laborers here in Richland. I'm here to speak in support of the Hop Hill Solar Project. It's been stated that this project will provide, looks like roughly 300 good jobs for this area in the Columbia Basin. And the developer has made it clear that this project intends to use local resources for construction. And it's also worth noting the large amount of tax money that would go back into the community. Overall, the project is important to the workers who lived here, their families, and generations to come. The workforce is here, we're ready, and we hope that FSEC would uplift developers that want to grow Washington's clean energy goals. I'm going to go off script for just a second, and to hear the actual landowners affected come and comment in favor of this project, I think should be a big signal for everyone that their private land is being used for a project that they support, and to see the work by the developer to include consideration for, there's a fancy word over there, agrovoltaics, I think is really interesting. So for the benefits to the area, to the landowners, and the minimal impacts on the environment, I hope that FSEC will support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant. Any other participants wish to comment at this point who are live in the auditorium room? Let's go ahead and move on to virtually. If you do wish to speak, go ahead and type your name into the chat so we can orderly do it. If we don't get any chats, then we'll go ahead and end this portion of tonight's meeting. Right, thank you. We'll also move on to the presenters' last public comments. Okay, before we move on to the presenters' additional comments, those of you who did not speak or do have additional comments you wish to make, you may do so by 11:59 p.m. tonight. There is an email on the website, also in front of us now, fsec@fsec.wa.gov. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there's a link on the last slide that we submitted of our presentation. I think we can find the short video there.
May I make a comment before the video starts?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think there's some general questions I'd love to make a comment about. I mean, one was about, where the power is going. There's a common, thought or feeling that, is that the power going to California or out of the region. And Ron hit on this a lot. I mean, really, you want to produce power where you use it. And one of the biggest issues, and I kind of hit on it, is the transmission system. There's a lot of constraints. And not only are there constraints in that system, there's a really high cost to move power. I mean, not only is solar not competitive in Southern Oregon, let alone California, the cost to move it there is cost prohibitive. So we would never move the power that far in general. I mean, the industry or the markets could change, but today that seems like quite a long shot in my perspective. I think there is also a thought of, who's going to pay for it? This is very expensive. I mean, Ron and I grew up in the business. We built coal plants. I built natural gas plants with Ron. We know economics of these. Solar in the last 10 years has become very competitive in the industry. It's in areas like Arizona or California, it's sometimes 2/3 the cost of coal. So it's very competitive. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a business and we're trying to generate some type of income or profit off these. And we're relatively technology agnostic as long as it's carbon neutral. And these type of projects are profitable. So the thought that, someone else is paying for it, we're actually have to participate in a competitive market to bid these projects. And the very last, I think, there's some thought around foundations and impact. In general, the panels are put on piles into the ground. We do not use concrete to hold the panels. We actually just push those into the ground. I think maybe the most difficult part of that construction process is if there's any competent rock, we will do some drilling to get those poles in.
Well, most of these so-called developers who come in on solar are really, I compare them to some of the original, gas lease guys going through Colorado and Texas trying to, get mineral leases and stuff. They're just basically collecting land to try to aggregate and put it together in a package that they're going to flip. That's not Bright Knight. Bright Knight is looking this for a long-term development. They want to be the developer, owner, operator. To me, that's important. You're working with somebody who's going to see it through to the end.
Washington State has led the nation in sustainable energy for 70 years. It is what we do, and we do it really well. Between nuclear, hydropower, now growing into solar and wind, this is our strength. We have a lot of land here, and right now we have lots of non-arable land, and we have to be able to provide farmers, especially small farmers, alternative ways in order to be able to generate income. This is good for the state. It brings in good paying jobs, union jobs often, and it moves us closer to our 2030 date of being 100% fossil fuel independent in Washington State.
We depend on a steady flow of construction jobs. So even though they are temporary, they mean everything. It doesn't matter necessarily that they're temporary, as long as there is always something else to go to.
I think with this renewable energy that we are getting, I think we have to adjust and a little change, but I think we're going to get a lot of benefit out of it, and that's important for every one of us.
I've lived in the Tri-Cities since 1968. Well, I have an interest in the agrivoltaics, and I think coming into our area will be wonderful for the area, wonderful for our farmers too.
Renewable energy would be a big impact for the community, especially with the the dam situations, the hydroelectric, the nuclear energy out of Hanford, and then the wind power and the solar. The solar would be, you know, out of sight, out of mind type situation.
What I want people to know about agrivoltaics and renewable power is that it's not an either or choice. And it's not, that to me is a false choice. These things can coexist, and they can coexist for mutual benefit. Like, there is gains that can be had on the agricultural side if you think about sun as a farm resource that you can manage. You're going to have sheep at Hop Hill. So in addition to plants, which is the primary crop for Hop Hill because the sheep have got to eat something. An interesting anecdote is whenever I do tours of our agrivoltaics research sites, I don't put up shade tents. I just say, everybody find a spot where they want to be. And where does everybody go? They all go under the solar panels. That's because just like humans want to be comfortable out of the sun, sheep do the same.
All right, thank you, everyone. This concludes the informational meeting. We will reconvene at 15 minutes from now, so right at 7:15 for the land use consistency hearing. Thank you all.
Kathleen Drew again, Chair of the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council, calling our land use consistency hearing to order today. Ms. Grantham, will you call the roll of the council members?
Certainly. Department of Commerce.
Kate Kelly, present.
Department of Ecology. Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Mike Livingston, present.
Department of Natural Resources.
Lenny Young, present.
Utilities and Transportation Commission.
Stacy Brewster, present.
The Hop Hill Project, Benton County, Paul Crouppen.
Present.
Chair, there is a quorum.
Thank you. Now I will turn it over to Judge Gerard.
Good evening, everyone. Pursuant to the revised Code of Washington 8. I think you need to be. Pardon? I don't think the microphone's on.
Oh, it is. He knows more.
Pursuant to revised Code of Washington 80.50.90 subsection 2 and Washington Administrative Code 463-26-035. We are now starting the land use consistency hearing. During this hearing, the public will be allowed to provide testimony regarding the proposed project's consistency and compliance with the land use plan and zoning ordinances. We will not limit the speakers on time. We will, however, limit them on subject matter. The speakers will only be allowed to discuss the land use consistency measures, not other considerations you wish to bring forth. We will start off with the applicants presenting their comments on the land use, after which the county will be allowed to present their portion on the land use consistency meeting. We will then take public comments at that point. As before, after this hearing is completed, if there are additional comments you wish to make, you may do so online by 11 p.m. or 11:59 p.m. tonight. So with that, applicants, if you wish to begin, please do.
Thank you, Chairman Drew, Judge Gerard, FSEC Council and staff. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. I just wanted to share how we developed this site from a land use perspective. If you look at the timeline in the upper portion of the screen, you can see we started developing the Hop Hill project in 2020. In early 2021, we finalized the site location and started due diligence and site work. In November 2021, we heard there was a potential of a change in the zoning code and decided to submit a conditional use permit, as it is a company policy to always work with the local community and county in the development of these projects whenever possible. In December 2021, the county made significant changes to their zoning code, which prevented the development of renewable projects in the county going forward. In 2022, we worked in collaboration with the county over a year to explore if there was a path through the local planning process. By the end of 2022, it became apparent that the county did not have the resources and staff to process our application in a timely manner, and we also didn't want to overburden local resources. The county dropped our COP application at the end of last year due to a slight difference in opinion around utilizing FSEC work in the SEPA process. Thus, we Did a project application with EFSEC in December of last year, which brings us in front of you today. I do want to say, again, we as a company really focus on working with local community government, and early engagement with the county has been critical in understanding and addressing concerns with the project, and we're still utilizing that information today. And I'll hand it over to Tim McMahon.
Thank you, Chris. Tim McMahon. I'm with Stoll Reeves Law Firm, and I have the privilege of being legal counsel to, is that on? Okay, all right, good. I had the privilege of being legal counsel to this applicant and representing this project. As the council's aware, land use has an unusual, or the EFSEC has an unusual system for adjudicating land use. It's 2 steps. The first step is the land use consistency hearing tonight, and the second step is much further down the road when the council conducts what I think Chair Drew has been calling the CUP process, the conditional use review, that toward the end of the process, the council asks the county and members of the public to recommend conditions, mitigation measures, et cetera, that best deal with local land use considerations in what would be a local process, but for the EFSEC process. So tonight, the focus is on land use consistency. And reflecting Judge Gerard's summary, the purpose is to determine, pursuant to RCW 80.50.090 sub 2, whether on the day of filing the application with EFSEC, the proposed site was consistent and in compliance with the county's land use plan or zoning ordinances. We've supplied a land use memorandum, a relatively brief memorandum. Attached to that memorandum is a chronology that Chris summarized briefly of the steps the applicant took to try through a lot of efforts to file a local conditional use permit application and to be consistent with the local zoning and land use and land use plan provisions, to eventually to no avail. So the land use memorandum and the appendix really sort of provides the anatomy of a moratorium in kind of how a project that finds itself in a place where the county's comprehensive planning and zoning is evolving, one would say, in a way that would prohibit renewable energy, and how that affected an applicant that was trying very, very hard to find the pathway to permit this project locally. But as Chris indicated, that ended up being to no avail. So the applicant spent many months in pre-application processes with the county between October 21st and December 21st between October 21 and December 21, the county considered a moratorium through a series of public hearings. The applicant was very much involved in those hearings, and on December 20 of 21, when it was clear that the county would impose a moratorium, the applicant filed a conditional use application that reflected the prior considerations and efforts with the county. And on December 30th, the county found that the conditional use permit application was incomplete and further denied the project due to the imposed moratorium. So on one level, on the date the applicant filed the application for site certification, the county had rescinded its allowance for a utility scale solar facility. However, as the judge indicated, RCW 80.50.090 requires consideration of whether the solar facility was in compliance with the zoning code at the time of the application for site certification or consistent with and in compliance with the comprehensive plan. We are unaware of any action that the county took to amend its comprehensive plan, and we suggest that the Siting Council consider this question when it considers the order that the council will ultimately issue on land use consistency. We do wish to reflect, and the applicant has already, I think, emphasized this, that the applicant understands the Growth Management Agricultural District zoning. The comprehensive plan provides guidance, and this application deliberately proposes a facility that enables the continued agricultural uses on this site through grazing. And we have submitted a land use consistency review document that that cites the comprehensive plan provisions and explains them and indicates how this project is consistent with the local comprehensive plan. And a key factor with the comprehensive plan is, in fact, the preservation of agricultural land use in this county and opportunities for property owners to take advantage of their property rights in facilitating and participating in an application of this kind. So you have that document, and we'd be happy to talk about it if you have questions. So I also wanted to explain why the applicant provided an application that reviews the now repealed conditional use permit criteria. We've done that because it's the best framework we have. So in other words, we looked to the code that was repealed, and we built the application and its land use consistency around those provisions in the code, rather than just sort of turning it over to the council to fashion that for yourself. We did use that as a framework for evaluating the criteria for the conditional use permit and the mitigation measures that could be considered under that prior code that is now repealed. And again, it's the best model we had to really try to reflect some consistency with this county's framework for a conditional use permit. So it is our intention and the applicant's intention to make reasonable efforts to assist the council in determining land use consistency now and in the future adjudication, the step 2 of land use review, which the council calls a conditional use permit phase of the adjudication. We emphasize that there need not be conflict between agricultural use and habitat with this application and others pending in this county. This application for site certification will demonstrate and has demonstrated a thoughtful balance between habitat issues and agricultural impact issues. And we have provided an application, this applicant has provided an application that does its best to actually account for ongoing agricultural uses on this site. So with that, that's the conclusion of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. All right, at this point, we're going to take the county to allow the presentation.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Michelle Cook, and I am the planning manager for Benton County. I'd like to speak to Hop Hill Solar Project's inconsistency and lack of compliance with the Benton County Land Use Plan and zoning ordinance. Prior to applying with FSEC, as we've heard tonight, the Hop Hill project initially submitted an incomplete conditional use permit application to the county on December 20th, 2021 for the proposed solar facility. This incomplete submittal was a hurried attempt to obtain vesting at the 11th hour for their project, as the application was received less than 24 hours before the Board of County Commissioners amended its zoning code to prohibit such uses. It should be noted that the ordinance amendment was not a temporary moratorium as inferred by the applicant in their memorandum, but rather a permanent code change that staff had spent many prior months drafting as a means to allow the county to protect its agricultural lands of long-term commercial significance. Despite the misconstrued suggestion in the applicant's memorandum that the county has animosity towards renewable energy, the county's priority is to protect its agricultural lands. The code change to the GMA agricultural zone was made in order to protect the long-term commercially significant agricultural lands from conversion to incompatible industrial uses and to ensure consistency and compliance with the county's comprehensive plan and the GMA, which charges the county to protect these lands. The applicant's initial CUP application submittal to the county was not vested under the zoning code as it applied on December 20th, 2021, because it failed to meet several requirements necessary to be deemed a complete application. The county did notify the applicant of the incompleteness of their submittal, and the county only received the materials for a complete application in March of 2022. March 29th, 2022 is the date which the CUP application was vested and which the zoning code would apply. The county's zoning code at that time and currently does not allow the proposed project as an allowed accessory or a conditional use in the GMA agricultural zone. The application before you tonight fails to comply with both the Washington State Growth Management Act and the Benton County Comprehensive Plan, which mandates and directs the county to prevent and protect agricultural lands of long-term significance. The proposed location of the Hop Hill Solar Project has a land use designation of GMA agriculture, and as such, non-agricultural uses are discouraged and restricted per the county's comprehensive plan. The proposed project is an industrial use, not an agricultural one. And the approximately 11,000 acre loss of commercially significant land would be both inconsistent and incompatible, not only with the county's comprehensive plan, but also its implementing regulations such as a zoning ordinance and the critical area regulations. The applicant is requesting that FSEC preempt the county's local land use plan and zoning ordinances, which do not allow such a large scale industrial use to occur on agricultural lands. Based upon the project's location, the proposal does not meet the intent of RCW 3670. It is not consistent with the goals and policies of the county's comprehensive plan, and it does not comply with the GMA agricultural zoning district, as solar farms are a prohibited use in this zone. As we've heard tonight, RCW 80050902 cites that the consistency with local land use shall occur on the date of application to FSEC. As such, it is our position that the county's local land use policies and zoning codes should be held in effect as they existed on December 22nd, 2022, the date of the application to FSEC, not the zoning codes as they previously existed on any other date. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. All right. At this point, we're going to take public comments.
The person I have signed up with me is Russell Walker.
Russell Walker, RUSSELLWALKER. I'm with the Operating Engineers Local 302. I'm speaking in support of the Hop Hill Solar Program. This is an exciting project that will not only help enable our clean energy transition and create local economic opportunity.
Mr. Walker, excuse me. Stop you there just a moment. This is for the land use. If there's comments about how this complies with the land use or does not, those comments are appropriate. These comments about your support should have been made during the informational session. I did make that clear in the initial opening statements.
I apologize.
So if you wish to make comments about the land use, you're certainly welcome to do so. If you wish to make the additional comments about your support that beyond that scope, you're certainly welcome to do that through the website before 12 p.m. tonight, 11:59.
Okay, I think I might be able to touch on that a bit here.
Of course, you're more than welcome to. I'm just letting you know the scope of what your comments should be.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I'll skip ahead here. It's also important to note that the project and land uses remain consistent with the applicable provisions of the Benton County Comp Plan, and it's compliant with the zoning ordinances at the time the applicant initially submitted a conditional use permit to the county. So I hope that falls within the parameters.
It certainly does.
Okay. We understand that despite our region's stated clean energy goals, the county has since eliminated the local pathway for studying and permitting wind and solar projects. When a local permitting pathway doesn't exist to consider projects such as these, developers are only left to turn to state permitting. Given our state's renewable energy needs, the profound economic opportunity the project represents for the local community, and the land use consistency with the county comp plan, we urge you to move this project forward. On another note, as stated by the landowners earlier tonight, this project makes their farming operation more sustainable, which helps maintain the current agricultural land use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And again, if you wish to make those additional comments online, you're more than welcome to do so.
I don't have anyone else signed up.
Okay. We're going to proceed the same way we did before. We're going to take anyone who wishes to make additional comments on the land use, who are currently in person. Please go ahead and step up to the podium. If we don't have any takers, then we'll go ahead and move online. We've waited the requisite 10 seconds. Let's go ahead and see if we have anyone online.
Hearing no further comments, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for participating.